September 28th meeting of the Historic Landmarks Commission. First item on the agenda is public comment. Any member of the public may address our commission for up to 2 minutes on any subject that is not scheduled on this agenda. I have one slip from Jill Zachary. Ms. Zachary. Please.
Jill Zachary, I'm the
Turn on the
Assistant
microphone,
Director.
please.
Jill Zachary, Assistant Director, Parks and Recreation. And I'm here at public comment to seek a volunteer from the Historic Landmarks Commission to participate in a focus group related to the development of the business plan for a renovated Cabrillo bathhouse. The Commission may be aware that we have a small amount of redevelopment agency funding to do two things. One, to conduct a facility assessment, kind of what's there, what condition is it in, could it possibly be renovated, and then we have KBZ Architects is the contract architect for that project. They're doing the facility assessment, similar to what was done at Cabrillo Recreation. At the same time, we've hired a business plan consultant to work with our department, Parks and Recreation, and stakeholders to identify potential ways to reprogram the interior of the building if renovation options are feasible. I mean, there's a lot of questions, obviously. What kind of answers we come up with, we don't know. And I'm the project manager, and one of the first key steps for the business plan consultant is to conduct focus groups with various stakeholders. So both bathhouse users, people that are beach users, city-appointed and elected officials, potential stakeholders that we might have in the future, hotel industry, restaurant lodging industry, hospitality industry. So we have, as you can imagine, a really long list of stakeholders. So we would like to know if there's an HLC member that would participate in one of the focus groups. The days of the focus groups are the 17th, 18th, and 19th of October. We're putting together the time slots, and I would contact you directly and say, here are the time slots. It's about an hour-and-a-half commitment. You would be in a focus group with other stakeholders, so it wouldn't just be, for example, someone that was bringing just the Historic Landmarks Commission perspective, and it would be with our business plan consultants. I would also add, so it would be one and a half hour commitment. That's it. That's all we're asking for. We are also having a community meeting the Thursday evening. So everyone on the commission, everyone that I can reach out to will know about that, and it'll be an opportunity for anyone of any interest to sort of find out what we're doing to participate. We're hoping that we will have the business plan developed by January. The Historic Landmarks Commission obviously will be in the loop as KBC does its work, and I don't have the schedule on hand for that, but that's coming down the road too. So that's it.
Okay. Do we have any questions?
Missing here.
Yeah.
I wonder if
Microphone.
Mr. Chair?
Commissioner Boucher?
we have 3 people missing from our group this week, and you need this right away, don't you?
It would be helpful to have a name so that I need to begin to start reaching out.
Which one of them shall we give it to?
Well, yeah, I was thinking we could appoint somebody, but it's not mandatory. Commissioner Drury?
My first question would be, my only question is, would you require the participant from HLC to be an architect?
No.
Okay, we have Commissioner Drury.
That's great.
Thank you, Commissioner Drury. Okay. Having no other public comment, I will close public comment and move to approval of the minutes of the Historic Landmarks Commission meeting of September 14th. Do I have a motion? I have a second. Boucher? Drury? Under discussion, any additions, corrections, or changes?
Well, it was such a long meeting.
Okay. I have a couple, if nobody else does.
That's great.
Okay.
That's great.
Page 3, item number 1, under the motion 1, it says to provide a work program for restoration to be coordinated through the city historian. We don't have one, so is that an issue? Okay.
It would be or they'll sign it.
or a environmental analyst? Okay, all right. Motion number 4, I propose adding a sentence to that says, include a proposal to remove, store, and reuse the roof tiles in future construction of the California Hotel.
That's good.
Okay, I just would like to ask the rest of the commission members, since you weren't present, is that something that the applicant had already, I believe, talked about storing them? Okay, so okay, so, Gabriella, did you get that, or do you want him to restate it? Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. Page 5, item number 3. Under the motion number 1, it should read, signage on the building facing the parking lot should be removed. Just to make it a little bit more clear. Under the motion number 3, removal of the arcade at State Street is unfortunate. Number 4, a bulkhead of 18 to 24 inches tall is preferred as opposed to having the storefront system go all the way down to the ground. Number 6, it was suggested that the overhead structure located at the back of the sidewalk on State Street be removed. Okay. Number 9, study increasing the space for the Tippewana trees in the finger planters of the parking lot. And number 10, study the shade requirements of the number 9, study increasing the space for the Tippewana trees in the finger planters of the parking lot. So strike the word and. Number 10, study the shade requirements of the trees in between the buildings. It's not really the arcade. Don't want them to get confused as what the arcade is and what it isn't. So item number 4, page 6. Under the motion, number 3, I suggest striking everything, including the word form, to the end of the sentence. Excuse me, from to the end of the sentence. So it should read, provide sections of adjacent structures as they relate to the proposed building. Show elevations in their entirety. Is that okay with everybody?
No,
Okay.
because the reason for the comment was the elevation of the building is not the entirety. We want to see essentially a streetscape elevation. So property line to property line is what we need.
Okay. Then leave it as is. Number 5, move the first riser at the steps at the back of the sidewalk to allow for railing projections. So move the first riser at the steps at the back of the sidewalk to allow for railing projections. Okay. Number 6, building forms need more definition as well as shade and shadow. So strike the word juxtaposition, providing more, because it's kind of conflicting with comment number 7.
But, okay, so
So
can
building
you
form-
restate that? Building forms need more definition?
More definition as well as shade and shadow. Everyone okay with that? Item number 5, page 7, under the motion, number 1, add the sentence, eliminate railing on top of parapet. And number 3, strike the words to have. So it should read option A is the preferred color option, which is the same color for both buildings. Just clarifies that a little bit better. And that is all I have. Anyone else? Hearing no one, I'll call the question. All in favor?
And Mr. Chair,
Yes.
just to, I just don't want to change the meaning of something.
I understand.
But, page 6 in the motion, item number 6. I'm looking at my handwritten notes, and your summary did say juxtaposition of building forms.
Uh-huh.
So,
The issue I'm having is its conflict with number 7, because we're talking about bringing the disparate parts together. So we're talking about unification there. And if we're talking about juxtaposition, that's the opposite of unification.
all these were separate summary items that you had when you made your summary and were making the motion. So, juxtaposition is certainly a different word than definition. So, juxtaposition to me is how the forms relate to each other this way.
How about modulation? That's fine, too.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would rather that. It
That's
clarifies
fine. So
a little
that
bit better.
sentence should read, building forms need more juxtaposition and definition.
Yes.
As well as shade and shadow. That's fine with me.
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. That was Boucher and Drury. And Arias abstains. Next item on the agenda is the consent calendar. Ms. Gantz.
Mr. Chair, item A, 525 State Street was final approval as noted. Item B, 1036 State Street was final approval of the review after final. And item C, 1219.5 Laguna Street was preliminary design and final approval as submitted, and those were reviewed by Commissioner Schallenberger.
May I ask a question?
Commissioner Boucher.
It's just that I've been interested in looking at Sharkies over the months. And I hope it's not.
Are you asking what is happening?
Yeah.
This was the final review. Don had been looking at it
Okay.
in previous reviews, and they were just, the purpose of this review was just to show how they'd complied with Don's previous comments. So,
Okay, that's great.
yeah,
That's great.
and they did.
Then I'll make a motion to ratify the consent calendar.
A motion by Boucher, second by Schallenberger. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Schallenberger, for doing the consent calendar. Next item on the agenda is item D, announcements and requests.
Commissioners Lavoy, Murray, and Sharp are absent from today's meeting.
Really?
This is for the public. Item 1, the project at 424 State Street has been postponed 2 weeks at the applicant's request. So item 2 at 20 East Carrillo Street will be moved up to the 1:45 p.m. time slot. And I just have one other announcement. Annual recruitment for city advisory group members is in progress. So a notice with this following schedule will be placed on the city council agenda of September 27th. Resignation deadline is tomorrow, Thursday, September 29th. So if any of you feel like you don't want to finish out your term, you would need to resign by tomorrow, so that we could then recruit in January beginning in January. So we would be without, if you would decide next week that you couldn't finish, they wouldn't be able to fill that vacant position until probably mid-year next of
2012.
June. Yes.
Whose terms are up?
Pardon?
Whose terms are up?
I believe it's Drury.
It's Michael Drury and then filling Suzette Naylor's position. So there's 2 HLC positions available.
Not
No,
termed
you're
out.
not termed out. Your 4-year appointment is expiring at the end of this year.
12/31.
So you need to reapply if you.
If you desire. You might want to
So
ask the
that-
rest of the commissioners if they desire you. No.
So you might want to just write down what I'm going to say. Mr.
Okay,
Chair,
sorry.
will be quiet.
Go ahead. Ms. Gantz, I'm sorry.
Monday, October 17th at 5:30, Michael. That's when you need to apply by to City Hall, to the city clerk's office. Interviews will then be in November, several dates in November, and then appointments will be made in the middle of December, December 13th. So application deadline, Monday, October 17th, 5:30 p.m. Call the city clerk's office at 564-5309.
And this goes for the public as well, so if anybody is interested in
Exactly.
sitting on this commission, we would welcome.
And other commissions.
Or other commissions.
Any other
yes,
board,
we
yeah,
would,
all
we
boards
would
and
welcome
commissions.
your service. So could you give that number, please, again, Ms. Gantz?
It's 564-5309, extension 4311.
Okay, thank you. Any other announcements? Okay, anyone else? Any subcommittee reports? None? We will then move to the first item on the agenda, which has been postponed. Do we need to make a motion for that postponement? No?
So moved at the applicant's request.
Yeah, we have a motion by Boucher. Second by Schallenberger. All in favor? Okay, we'll move to the next item, which is item number 2, 20 East Carrillo Street. This is a proposal to replace 138.12 square feet of existing signage. Oh, this one needs to stay here. Have a seat and give us a brief presentation. Yeah, I got it. Please state your names for the record. And turn on your microphones first. It's the button there.
John Shehorn with Santa Barbara Bank and Trust. I'm Director of Corporate Real Estate.
Welcome.
And Joe Mueller with Chandler Signs.
Welcome.
Thank you. Okay, well, may I start?
Yes, absolutely.
All right.
Make a quick request as we do, though. Would you mind starting with what has changed from the previous application?
Sure.
Thanks.
In fact, if I may, I wanted to sort of just briefly recap where we left the last meeting, and then that'll sort of flow right into the changes that we've made. At our last meeting, we went over the introduction of a new logo and branding for the bank. There was a lot of discussion about the logo, font, and colors and so forth, and we'll address some of those issues today. But a point I don't think I made very clearly, and I'd like to now, is we have invested almost $1 million just in corporate signage changes, and this is actually one of the very last branches in the entire system. This is considered a flagship branch by the bank, and this is part of that. The other issue is with the logo. I did find, in fact, that it has been registered with the state as a trademark and is filed federally as well. That relates to the logo, the font, and the colors. So I just wanted to make that point because it came up as a question. I also wanted to say that I did some research, and I found that both properties are, in fact, on the same parcel. So while we're talking about the same address, there are, in fact, 4 points of entry to the building. There are actually 4 sides of the building that we're trying to address, as well as the pavilion. So with that, I'd like to just kind of go into what the changes are and what we've done since we last met. For simplicity's sake, anything labeled B as in boy is a wall sign. Everything else as a dot on that sheet is an ATM directory or a door vinyl. So they would be considered tertiary signage. So with that, the sign noted as A, the monument sign on Carrillo and Anacapa, after great discussion, we have decided to leave that sign as is. We understand the historical significance of it. It was also an award-winning design, and if it ain't broke, don't fix it. So we'll leave that as is. There was also a gold color in the logos on the buildings that was kind of loosely specified. We have since agreed to take that up a notch and do all the gold leaf finish just like you see on the monument sign letters now, as opposed to a painted finish. The other concession that we've made, and we're in agreement with, is we had some letter heights on the various building signs that exceeded 10 inches. We're now in compliance with that letter height on all signs. Lastly, we've reduced the overall square footage since originally proposed by about 20%. And we've even deleted one sign that was on a smaller facet of the tower that was known as B6 that was facing a parking garage. We'd still like to have that sign for the record, but in an attempt to give up on square footage, we felt like that was the easiest give up. The only other point I wanted to make, aside from maybe walking through the scope of work, is that with that logo, and I know we talked about this last time, if we draw a rectangle around the entire sign area, it's eating up about 40% of our square footage. So I would just kindly like to ask that as we think about square footage in totality for this property, that that is taking up a significant portion of what we're allowed. John, I'd also like to have you speak for a moment about the bank.
I think what Joe indicated, that this is a rebranding effort, and one of the reasons we left the main branch in Santa Barbara to the last is it is an icon. It's our landmark. And when the new CEO stood at the Adobe, which we also lease, and looked across the street, he saw U.S. Bank with a bunch of colors. And at the time, we were developing the logo in the red. And he said to me, he said, you know, we need to rebrand the company, and we really need to work on our landmark facility first and foremost. And I said, well, that's true, but we've got 4 different buildings, all within a block, and they all are important. And because of the complexity of... And just to explain, this is quite a large building in the sense that there's the front pavilion piece, there's an owned piece of property that's 2 stories, and we also lease about 6,000 square feet from the Masonic Temple. And that's why the square footage and scale of this project requires, you know, for our customers to find the entries on these various sides of the building. It seemed important to have a scale. And to use the logo to reduce the size of the lettering, I think, is going to be an issue for our customers. So I don't think the building is oversigned. I think that the building is a classic building, and the company has spent an enormous amount of funds in the last 3 years fixing the building, and I'm sure if anyone's been in it, they see the huge difference. And then we re-roofed it as well. So again, this is sort of our iconic, so we would like you to take special consideration for that. Thank you.
Okay. All finished?
Yes.
I just had some photos I could circulate that show a little better overall of the building. If
Start down there. Okay. I will open public comment, and I have one speaker wishing to make a comment, and that is Mr. Kellum DeForest. If you could just use that microphone, please, Kellum.
Thank you. Kellum DeForest, good afternoon. Just 2 things. These might be for the sign committee, but the Camino Viejo guidelines, it's the material that the gold logo now is going to be made of, and the guidelines don't want plastic or and want to the signage and logos to fit into the guidelines. So it would be interesting to know what. For example, this big gold one number, I can't quite see the number from there, but signage. And then also it's a little unclear, it looks like you've toned down the red, so it isn't the bright red that you have at some of your other facilities. And the guidelines or ask for muted colors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. DeForest. I will close public comment and bring it to questions from the commission. Do we have any questions, anyone? Mr. Schallenberger.
So just to get the numbers right, first thing that jumps out is in the project description that there are 2 exceptions being requested, and one was to exceed the 90 square foot maximum total signage allowed, and the second was to exceed the maximum 10-inch letter height. It seems that we're down to 1 exception being requested at this point.
Mr. Chair? So the exception for overheight letters, they did bring their letters down. However, there were, I believe, 5 ampersands that are still over 10 inches in height. But if you use the averaging rule, then it's okay.
Okay.
So it would be, and this was after I'd updated the project description in great detail with Mr. Reich of the sign company. He was very, very helpful in getting the information to me when I needed it. Unfortunately, we determined after the agenda was out that that the ampersands don't cause them to have another exception. So it would just be the 1 exception.
And that's the exception
That would be for
the
the
90-foot.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay, that leads to the second. These this project description is now accurate as far as 138.2 existing, 136.92.
Yep.
And that includes the removal of B6?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. And
Yep.
then the monument sign and the ATM signs don't count towards the 90, is that correct?
There were, let's see here.
In other words, what are we comparing the 90 to, 160 or 136.92?
So 90-foot maximum. I don't understand your question.
Okay, there's a 90 square foot maximum, right? Does that include the monument sign and ATM signage, or is that
Yeah,
just what's
yeah.
on the buildings?
All signage.
No,
Okay.
all signage.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
I just wanted to be clear.
Oh, okay.
It's not really a
Yes.
factor
It's
in what I'm
They're total.
considering, but
That they would, every building has a maximum allowed, and theirs is
Okay.
90.
I just needed to understand it.
Any other questions, Mr. Schallenberger?
No, I'll say I have comments, though.
Okay. Any other questions from any commissioners?
Question.
Commissioner Arias?
Can we have the pictures down here?
There you go.
Like a few minutes to look at them, please. Could you put back up the diagram that you had showing all the signs and their locations?
You know what, I would borrow
Yeah, that's good.
drawings from this side and put them down. They only brought 2 sets.
Okay. Commissioner Schallenberger has a
Question
question.
is, there was sign exception findings that needed to be made.
Right.
Can I hear those again, or?
Ms. Gantz, do you have those handy, the sign exception
Findings, yes.
findings that we need to make? Okay, let's just pause while Commissioner Arias is reviewing.
I also have a question.
have any time today.
It would be the part.
I also have
I'll
a
read them.
question on the color, the red. Do you have samples of the
You have an actual
the
sample.
revised red that you bring in?
I do. They asked for it.
I believe we had asked for a letter sample, too. Did you bring those with you?
I actually, the red one? It got damaged on the way back, unfortunately.
So fed up with the HLC.
But I came back with a red that now has black mixed into it.
Okay. Commissioner Jury, would you take this out into what sunlight we have?
I'd like to look at it out in the sunlight, please.
Okay. Any other questions, Commissioner Arias?
I want to look at it.
Okay. We're going to pause for a minute while the 2 commissioners look at the color of the red, while the 3 commissioners look at the color of the red. Oh. While they're doing that, I can, for the benefit of the public, I can read the exceptions, the findings for the exceptions. Before an exception may be granted, the following shall be shown. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to other properties in the vicinity. The granting of the exception will not be materially detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to the properties or improvements in the vicinity. The proposed sign is in conformance with the stated scope and intent, stated purpose and intent of the sign ordinance. So it has to meet all three of those findings. Yeah, it's not the best day to look at the colors, but okay. Commissioner Drury, I would like you to read to yourself those exceptions. Commissioner Arias, what was your determination on the color?
Well,
Or were your thoughts on the color?
I think it's a lot better than the original, but I still have some reservations about it.
Okay, well, we'll continue with questions then. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, Commissioner Drury?
Was there any thought given to I think one of the things in the motion was the red idea with a gold overpaint?
No.
Yeah, it's in the motion. There was not just this black red. There was another color in the motion from last week. I made that comment in the comments section because I thought that it would be somewhat, since you have this beautiful.
Yeah, you're right. It says either a red gold
Yeah.
or a black or blue-based red.
Should have said and
Right.
or.
Okay. Yeah, they chose
Yeah.
the black or blue-based
Okay.
red.
All right. So you didn't think about
The gold.
gold
Yeah.
idea.
We tried. It was a miserable fail. It came out almost kind of orange. We thought this would give it more the aged look.
It's a much more attractive and less obtrusive color than the red you have on the headquarters and the trust division, I'll admit. I made that comment last week because, this is a comment. I will make that comment and comment.
Yep. Any other questions? I have a question. Remind me again why you are changing. And I don't want to hear that you're changing the brand, but why you're changing from this color to this color. This seems like a perfectly acceptable color to me. And if you add the gold logo to that, it pops even more. But I want to hear it from you.
Sure. It was twofold. One is this sign represents itself as an illuminated sign in several other areas and branches. So red clearly pops as an illuminated sign. I realize we're not doing that here, but for sake of branding and consistency. The second thing was it was just part of the overall logo study.
Okay.
They actually spent a bunch of money and studied the font and the colors, and that's the combo.
They may have overthought it, but that's not my call. Any other questions? Okay, comments. We'll start with Commissioner Drury.
My comment would be that I think it would be much more effective and actually be probably a stronger statement. I'll just go
The exception.
talk first. My frames are all done with iron oxide, and that's rubbed out and then gold on top. Good Lord have mercy. My frames are done with an iron oxide, gold on top of that sanded back. So you get this warmth underneath. And my idea then was that you have this beautiful award-winning sign at the corner of Anacapa and Carrillo. And I think that it would be a more effective sign if some of that gold was on top of that red. And that's probably a powder coat. The problem with powder coat is it's under great heat, and it has to be done properly. And it may be that you're not willing to spend the money. I mean, this is a matter of opinion. Is that me? That's okay. So that's a question of opinion. The other thing is I also think, this is an opinion, but I think that gold logo is too big. 3.5 letters in on both ends, and I think if it was 3 letters in other words, ending with the with the right side of the T and the right side of the B, it would be a more effective logo.
Isn't this consistent with?
Anyway, that's my take on it, and I do think, and I will disagree with Chair Suding, that the burnt umber, or it's burnt original color is one of the uglier colors in the palette, in anybody's palette. I don't use it when I paint, and I think that ramping up and rebranding is a great idea. I would just like to see it be a little less red and a little more gold, and that the logo itself, that sunrise or whatever it is, be made a bit less obtrusive. That's my comment.
Thank you. Commissioner Schellenberger?
I'd actually like to hear Commissioner Boucher's comments first, being that she's on the sign committee. And
Commissioner Boucher, do you have any comments?
Helped write the sign ordinance too, you know. Anyway, I think this is a great improvement. And I would agree with the comment that the fan or whatever would probably work a lot better for me if it were slightly reduced in size. It's just overwhelming with that big. I think I'm pleased with the idea of the gold leaf, and I think the color is a vast improvement over the. Whatever you do in all the other places all over California is one thing, but this, as you understand, is just in a really sensitive block. And, you know, you near the Lobero and the post office and all these landmarks in Santa Barbara. So that's why we're being pretty careful here, because, and this particular bank, I understand it's no longer locally owned, but it is sort of representative of our community, and we've all been very pleased with it over the years. We went in the first week, 1960, I think.
1960.
Yes. So I think this is it. I think this is much better.
Commissioner Boucher, do you think you can agree with all of the findings for the exception?
The first
You
one.
don't
The,
have to
fir-
answer
the first. The first one is the tricky one.
Yeah, that's one I have a problem with too. Okay, Commissioner Arias, any questions? Or any comments, I'm sorry.
I agree about the logo being too dominating. Personally, from my own standpoint, I prefer to see as minimal signage as possible on buildings. I think your clients will find the building. I have to make one comment that really isn't well, I better not, but you make the decision to go into this. We didn't. And what you spend, you decided to spend. Mm-hmm. And so that is something that is your decision, and it does not really affect our decision. It's a business decision you made. We are sitting here making decisions as to what we think is best for the city of Santa Barbara and the historic district. And as far as I'm concerned, I would like to see the color reduced as much as possible and the logo reduced also. I think doing it in good taste is appropriate. I'm not thrilled with the color. Not at all.
Oh, Mr. Chair, I forgot to say something.
Commissioner Boucher?
That's odd for me. I will not accept any letter larger than 10 inches.
Okay. Commissioner Schellenberger, anything?
Yeah, I think, first of all, I wanted to address the exceptions, and I think that they can all be found and all be made. The first one being, I guess, the most problematic, but not really. It asks for exceptional circumstances, and the exception in this case, I think, is existing signage is greater, and if the proposal is rejected, they're actually going in the other direction and it being less in compliance with the 90 square feet. So I think that's an exceptional thing that is happening here that isn't going to happen at other properties in the vicinity. So the fact that they're actually reducing square footage, I think, is the exception that can be made there. the colors, I'm fine with. I agree with the applicant's comment on the way that square footage is calculated. I think it's a little unfortunate, and it also, I think, is a guideline. And I know it's the way the calculation is made, but I also think of signage in the way that it's perceived. And I don't see these as this big giant rectangle. I see them as this form that has sort of an arched form at the top, and so that's fine with me. I don't have any problem with that. And the colors, I think it's a subjective thing, but I think the colors are approvable per the EPV guidelines. So I'm not going to be the one to subjectively tell you that you can't use this color. It really is your choice, and sometimes that works against me. Sometimes it works for me, but it's still, the bottom line is you're in compliance with the guidelines. So I can approve the project as presented.
I don't think you mentioned anything about the logo size. Is that acceptable to you, or did I miss it?
Well, again, it's a form issue, and if it were brought in, it wouldn't kill me. But it feels like it's been studied. That it feels like there is some proportion here that has been studied, and I'm not sure that if we saw it again in the smaller version, it might not look too small and out of proportion. So, and I also, on that note, I think our eye is being deceived by the printing production of this logo. I think the gold leaf, as it'll be finally constructed, is going to look a lot more subdued and different. And I really think that it's actually throwing us off in sort of a negative direction. I think the final product is going to look a lot better than what's being presented here.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, I just wanted to bring up a thing. If the letters are being, have you recalculated your square footage since you've reduced the letters?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
But,
Sure you have.
Mr.
Ms.
Chair,
Gantz?
Commissioner Boucher, I just wanted to reiterate that they are in compliance with the letter height, everything except for the 5 ampersands over the whole site.
That's fine. That's
So,
fine.
okay.
I just wanted to be sure that that was calculated.
Okay. Go ahead, Commissioner Drury.
Back to the gold, because it's the corporate headquarters just up the street, as I recall.
Yes, it
Across the street is the trust division. Across the street again is the Adobe you've leased, and then the rather complicated building, not to mention the drive-up. So I think that the amount of signs is appropriate. I just think that the fact that it is sort of the flagship block, if you will, from Figueroa down to that, I would really like to see it, all of it, kind of brought under, because it is your main branch, the main deal. I'd like to see those letters go to the gold, not to the red, because that would put it right in keeping with the award-winning sign on the corner. That's my comment.
Oh, I do have another. What is in that?
Oh, I brought a sample of the logo.
It didn't execute as we planned. We just literally got it overnighted here.
Okay. Well, then if it's not something that you're happy with, then we're not going
I would
to review
prefer
it.
to resubmit
Yeah.
a better sample.
Okay. I think I need to take a straw vote on how many people feel that the red color, as presented, as proposed, is acceptable. Straw vote, please. Okay. 4? Correct. And how many of the commissioners feel that the logo of the sunrise is acceptable as proposed, proportionally? 2. So looks like you're going to need to reduce the size of the logo, or to study that, bring that back to us.
Or other commissioners.
Well, this is what we have to deal with today. So,
Well, if it gets continued,
Yeah.
there will be,
Other
I believe
commissioners,
Commissioner
yeah.
Lavoie is out in 2 weeks.
yeah. So bring both. Bring something smaller and something like this.
Okay.
So we can look at that. I think that's what the commission needs to see.
Need to see a sample of that.
Yeah, I'm not quite finished yet. That's okay. I too am having difficulty in getting over the exception, and particularly the first exception. And Commissioner Schallenberger mentioned that the exceptional circumstance is that you're reducing the overall square footage of the sign. Well, the condition doesn't read that way, or the exception doesn't read that way. It says that there are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applicable to the property involved, not necessarily to the signs. I'm not trying to correct you or something, but I'm just interpreting it differently.
That's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a tough one for me to get over because you're not any different, really, than any other building in Santa Barbara. You have a lot of entrances. I understand that. There are other buildings that have a lot of entrances. You have a large piece of property with 2 buildings on it. There are other pieces of property with 2 buildings on it. So you're not really the way I'm reading it is are you guys, is this application any different than anybody else's application? And I've not seen it. So that's how I'm having trouble with the exceptions.
The lease thing with Masonic Temple, and it seemed like there were a couple of things that were a little bit unique.
Yeah. So I don't know what course we have if we can't meet all those exceptions. Ms. Gantz, is that?
I'm wondering if, yeah.
Because it's not an or situation, it's
No.
and. It's all 3.
Right. I was wondering about, the linear building frontage is 150 feet. Did you measure, Joe, is that measured the main building and the pavilion? Do you know if that's included in there? Because
verify that.
Because I'm wondering, maybe, although you would still only be allowed 90 feet because you don't get foot per foot, square foot of signage per linear foot of building front. When it gets to be a certain point, 90 is the max when you go over a certain number. But I'm thinking it might be an exceptional or out of the ordinary circumstance if you have more than one building. Therefore, you would need more signage. So, but I don't know how that was measured. I don't know
It's all
if
the same inside.
Jeff measured. Excuse me.
It's all one building inside with the exception of the drive up.
The motor bank.
Right, and that's a separate.
Yeah.
That's a separate building. So that might. Obviously, they would need to have signage on that building too. So that's. But I'm saying I don't know how it was measured. I don't know if they only measured the main building or if they also measured the pavilion when they did the linear.
Yeah. Unfortunately, though, the exception
it's still
reads
90.
property involved, not buildings
Right.
involved. And, I'm not trying to be a stickler, but I have to be comfortable with these exceptions before. Yeah, I can't.
Right.
My hands are tied.
There's a bank across the street.
So I see what you're saying, Ms. Gantz, and that it is a separate building,
And
but
it is one.
this unfortunately
It's one
reads
parcel.
property,
Yeah, it's one parcel.
not building.
The 2
Yeah.
buildings are not
Yeah.
on 2 parcels.
There are 2 parcels.
I was under the impression it was
Masonic Temple is separate,
okay.
just for clarity.
So the Masonic Temple is one parcel, and this is another.
Correct.
These 2 buildings are on one parcel.
Correct.
Yeah. Well, I would like some interpretation by staff on that, I think. But in any case, I think you guys are going to be returning. Would you like a 2-week continuance?
Mr. Chair?
Okay. Commissioner Drury.
I would like to, I don't want to make, I know this is an important corner. I don't want to make a huge thing out of this. I think that an exception, I would tend to read those exceptions the way Commissioner Schellenberger did. And I would, if it came to a vote at this moment, I would vote to approve the project.
Okay. Well, would someone either like to make a motion to approve or to continue?
I'll make a motion to continue for 2 weeks.
Okay. We have a motion by Boucher.
I would second.
Okay, we have a second by Drury, and the comments are that the red color as proposed is acceptable, and that the applicant shall return with a study of the reduction of the logo.
And
And to bring a sample of the letter. I have a little angel whisper in my ear here. Okay, all in favor?
aye.
Opposed? No, of the
Of the
actual
letter.
letter, cutout letter. So bring a sample of the actual cutout letter. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Schallenberger, opposed?
Oh, Drew, did you oppose?
No. Motion carries. Do you understand the motion?
I do. I just had a question.
Sure.
Sure.
Commissioner.
Just on the logo, I'm struggling because we have actually by mistake done a logo that was smaller once and it looked stupid. It's a technical term.
Did you vote that?
We actually made the mistake here and took it down almost the same day. But I
Because the service mark, it's very, very particular. And, I mean, there was a lot of attention paid.
You have this in place in on buildings.
Oh, absolutely.
do. So I'm just trying to figure, without wasting everybody's time and going back and forth and guessing, I'm just trying to,
There's plenty.
that might speak volumes.
I'm just proposing it to be line up with that talking about
Right. Okay. That's pretty simple. Yeah.
Well, it does.
That was seconded by Drury.
This is
How much of it?
an exceptionally important block in the community.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Can I say
It
just one
may
more
very
thing?
well be that when you come back with a smaller logo, we'll agree with you that it just doesn't look right. You know, so it's not, we need to evaluate it.
I understand.
And-
But I
and-
just for clarity,
Yes, go ahead.
every piece of publication, every marketing material, every business card, every piece of letterhead, we have a strict standard to the size of the logo. And he's right. When they put it up at 10:02 Anacapa and it was too small, I got 3 calls from our marketing department saying, "What have you done?" So they're very, very strict. So I'm just saying, we've done a lot of study, and it does look, believe it or not, it does look better. It's like the way it is. But we'll come back.
I hate to do that to you, but
just hate to
it's
come
just,
back.
I know, it's
Just
just,
delay 2 weeks for,
We certainly like to have the option to get it right. Maybe it is right. But I
Okay.
think this is really an important corner.
I agree with that.
yeah.
Buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Then, also, could staff help us interpret the exception of B1 at the next meeting?
The exception of B1?
How we can make that exception.
Okay,
Chair.
I actually will not be here, so I
Maybe
will
Mr.
ask
Lamone.
Mr. Lamone for
Okay.
that.
Mr. Chair,
How you can make the findings
For that exception.
for the exception for B1, the sign,
Yeah.
I see, okay, got it.
Yeah, not sign B1. The-
I understand, on the sheet,
change of
yes.
ownership.
All right, Commission,
Is that a condition, change of ownership? Because if you change the bank, they'd have to come back, right, and change all their signage.
We're just
Right.
talking
Wouldn't they?
about this one
I
location.
know,
Yeah,
that's what I'm
but-
talking about, but there was a change of ownership.
right, no, so, I mean, say
That's
State
why
Bank
I
of
was-
America bought
I
it,
know
and they
that.
were going to come in,
They'd have to.
but they would be then held to the sign ordinance standards. You're asking for an exception to the sign
Understand.
ordinance standards, so
Understand.
that's why we have to make the finding for
I do.
B1.
Okay.
Yeah,
That's a legal.
I understand.
if-
It's a legal finding.
and we're trying to work with you here, but we have to
I
make the
understand.
finding.
Okay.
Commissioner Rios.
I would ask staff to ask Mr. Lamone to meet with the city attorney about this matter for the interpretation of this.
Well, however he wants to do it,
He
would be
needs to
most
do-
likely.
I'm sorry, I'm asking specifically that he inquire of the city attorney.
Okay. We're keeping this.
You want to keep that one?
Yeah.
Is that it for this long meeting?
Yes, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, gentlemen.